If you're buying a house in the United States, August 17th, 2024 is a date you need to mark on your calendar because on this day, the NAR, the National Association of Realtors, has implemented some important changes due to a lawsuit filed against them by the United States Department of Justice. What happened? In March 2024, I'll leave the video here for you. I explain this in a bit more detail so you can watch the video. However, the most important points are that the United States Department of Justice sued the NAR with some fundamental claims or proposals. First, more transparency, since real estate agents who represent buyers in the United States. It gave the impression that they were free because when you looked for a real estate agent in the United States, you never paid them a single dollar at any point, and it seemed like it was a free service for you. That probably made you trust the agent representing you a lot, and according to the Department of Justice, this should stop happening, and that's why they asked this Association of Real Estate Agents in the United States to be more transparent and to stop giving the impression that their services were free for buyers. They also asked them to remove from their home sale listings any filters based on commissions to sellers. What does this mean? When someone puts their house up for sale, when you put your house up for sale, you can look for a real estate agent, which is what most of us do, to represent you and sell the house for you. And we do this because we believe it's the way to sell a house. Just like when we want to buy a house, we think the way to do it is through a real estate agent. And while it's true that it doesn't have to be this way, no matter which side you're on, in my personal opinion, it really is the best option, because such an important transaction in your life as selling your house shouldn't be something you do yourself. Leave it to the experts, the real estate agents who represent you as a seller or as a buyer. But what was happening before this lawsuit? All the commissions, both for the seller's agent and the buyer's agent, were paid from the funds the seller received from the sale when the transaction was completed. And because of this, buyers never realized how their agent, the one who represented them and maybe fought really hard for them, actually got paid. They got paid from the money the seller received. And this is something many agents have argued. And I could argue it too, that at the end of the day, the money came from the buyer because the buyer was the one who paid for the house. So there's nothing new here, said the NAR representatives. Really, the heart of this story is that we, as home buyers and sellers, whichever side you're on, think about what we have to do. And when a home seller is told, look, the commission you're going to pay for selling your house is 5 or 6%, the home seller probably accepts it in many cases because they're given a very nice, very professional presentation about how their house will be sold and how, by hiring an agent to represent them, they'll get the maximum possible money for their home. Thank you, which is true. I still recommend that you don't try to sell your house on your own if you're not a professional, because you'll probably set the price too high and end up taking months or even years to sell it and get frustrated. Or you might set the price too low and lose money. From my point of view, in most cases, for those of us who aren't in the business of buying and selling houses, it's going to be more convenient to hire those professionals who specialize in this. The difference is that we as clients think that the 5 or 6% they charge you as commission, which is typically split between two, the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. There are some seller's agents who keep a larger percentage and maybe give the buyer's agent just 2%. This division of the funds, this splitting of the commission, this has changed as a result of this lawsuit, and now the agents representing the seller can no longer advertise that they will give a certain percentage or a specific commission to the buyer's agent. And all this tongue twister has also created more confusion in the U.S. market, precisely because there's a home seller with an agent and a home buyer with an agent. So we have a client buying and a client selling, and we have a seller's agent and a buyer's agent. The truth is, when you think about it a little more carefully, it's much easier than it seems. You have a seller with their agent, and you have a buyer with their agent. So, as a result of this lawsuit, which was ultimately settled, the NAR announced that on August 17, 2024, it would implement major changes in its policies, of which we can mention two. And with these two policies, implemented by NAR on August 17, 2024, we can clear up much of the confusion that currently exists in the market. Some people say that after August 17th, certain things will become illegal, that they won't be allowed anymore. But the truth is, this isn't even the legal date is a date that NAR voluntarily implemented and published in different ways, including on its website. These two important changes, there are several, but two are especially important, are causing the most confusion in the industry. Among buyers, home sellers, agents representing buyers, and agents representing sellers. These two major changes that NAR has announced are as follows. Number one, which is the one causing the biggest stir in the industry. Agents representing a buyer can no longer show more homes without first having a prior agreement regarding their compensation. A lot of attention has been focused on this particular element because part of the agreement is about greater transparency and stopping the impression that these services are free. This new agreement, where NAR requires its members not to show homes without a written compensation agreement, has caused a lot of buzz because now buyers will have to be much more careful in choosing the agent who represents them. And also because of this, it has been said that as a result of this change, it is expected that more than half of real estate agents will quit. They'll leave the industry because they won't be able to justify their value. The truth is that practically half of licensed real estate agents who passed their exam sold 0 to 1 house last year. So for this half of the agents, it really doesn't matter much whether they leave or not, because either way, they're not selling right now anyway. Probably many of them aren't interested in leaving the market because this change doesn't really affect their production. The other half, those who are actually selling 2 or more houses a year, are the ones who will now be forced and hopefully motivated, excited, and determined to prove their value to buyers. I have no doubt about the value of a real estate agent representing you as a buyer and also as a seller, which is probably just as important. However, now this task is going to be of great importance. Probably the number one responsibility you'll have as a real estate agent in the United States, whereas before you had it for free just by having your license. Now you have the opportunity to prove your worth, and in doing so, go out into the market to get more clients, because now, according to NAR, starting August 17th, 2024, you need to have this agreement in writing with your clients before showing them houses. This isn't a law. Honestly, if you don't do it, you won't be committing any crime. However, you would be breaking the agreement with NAR, which you belong to if you are a real estate agent. Very important change number 2. Starting this August 17th, the commission for the agent representing the buyer will no longer be part of the initial offer to sell the house. Buyers didn't know this, but the seller and both agents, the one representing the seller and the one representing the buyer, these three parties already knew how much the agent representing the buyer was going to earn. For you as a buyer, it used to be part of the agreement, but now it can no longer be part of that agreement because, according to this lawsuit, it put other properties at a disadvantage, those that didn't offer as good incentives as the ones that gave a higher commission. That's why this previously agreed upon commission from the home seller will no longer exist. However, a very important point that the NAR has also published on its official site, nar.realtor, and they mention it in their frequently asked questions, number 40, which says, can a buyer ask the seller's agent to pay the commission for their own agent? In other words, you as a buyer, you can ask the seller's agent to pay your agent's commission, and according to NAR, the answer is yes. This would put an end to all the confusion that's happening in the market, with all the fear that now fewer buyers will be able to enter the market because they have to worry about paying their agent's commission. What NAR says is that you, as a buyer, can ask the seller of the house to pay the commission for the agent who represents you, which is something that had been happening forever, we could say, before this lawsuit came up. According to NAR, you will still be able to do this as a buyer, but with that small change that now everyone will know about it. The only ones who didn't know before were the buyers, and now the buyers also know that from the money of their purchase comes the commission to pay their agent, which I hope most people have no problem knowing, because if they're providing good service, if they're giving you good service, it's a very fair commission. Now, something that could be a change is that with buyers now being aware that the money they're paying, a 5 or 6%, goes to pay the commissions of these two agents, possibly, and everything I've talked about and what everyone else is saying is speculation because nothing is set in stone. For example, if you as the buyer ask the seller of the house that instead of paying a 6% commission, they pay a 4%, then the seller saves 2%. And the remaining 4% is split equally. 2% goes to the seller's agent and 2% goes to the buyer's agent. In this scenario, the buyer wins because they save 2%. Your agent as the buyer earns their 2% commission, and the seller's agent earns a 2% commission. And the seller of the house saves 2% because they no longer have to pay a 6% commission, so almost everyone wins in this scenario. I say almost everyone because the agent representing the seller might not earn the same commission as before this lawsuit existed. However, this is one way I see that, as of today, everyone could actually benefit from this lawsuit, because otherwise I don't really see any real benefit for anyone. A buyer without a professional agent representing them is going to be at a disadvantage. A home seller without buyer agents helping people who want to buy a house will also be at a disadvantage because they're going to have more problems, more complications when it comes to selling that house. And the seller won't be able to sell their house. So I think this lawsuit has opened the door for greater benefits for everyone. The seller is going to save a bit on commissions. Possibly the ones who might lose out here, if you can put it that way, are the seller's agents. However, let's keep in mind that in countries like Singapore and the United Kingdom, the commissions paid to agents who represent residential real estate agents get commissions of 1 to 2%, while in the US we're paying 5 to 6% for these transactions. So it's true that with this change, it's unlikely there will be discounts on houses, and it's unlikely there will be savings for buyers, but the door is open, the possibility exists if the parties come to an agreement, which I think is wonderful. Because in this real estate business, so much money is involved that, unfortunately, it often brings out the worst in us, but it can also bring out the best in us in opportunities like this. And by working together, the four main people involved in this transaction, the seller, the buyer, and their two agents, they can take advantage of this opportunity to win, to turn this change, this lawsuit, into a win-win, which is what, at the end of the day, we want as a society, as individuals, and as workers in the industry. I don't sell houses, but part of my job is to get the money, to secure financing for you as the buyer so that the whole transaction can happen. Can only happen because without money, there's no way for the deal to go through. But if you're already ready to buy your first house, you can call me. I have contacts with more than 200 banks across the United States. And if you want to buy your house right now, I can help you get a loan to make that dream come true. So if everyone in this market gives their best, this change will be a good one. Everything you hear today is just rumors. They're just opinions, but if you stay positive, active, and confident that no matter what happens, you'll achieve your dream of selling your house, buying your house, or representing the seller or buyer in this transaction, everything will turn out fine and we'll be able to get some really good things out of this change. The most important thing is to never stop. You can do it.